Today, another company files for bankruptcy. This time it's crypto exchange Bittrex. DCG looks to refinance its debt to Genesis as the company holds mediation talks with creditors. And Tim Tully of ZelCore warns the current heavy-handed regulatory approach might force most blockchain innovation overseas. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Mackenzie Sigalos. Digital currency is moving lower again this morning, with Bitcoin dropping further below the $28,000 level, Ether trading at around $1,800, and Solana dropping to $20.50, all by noon Eastern. Okay, let's talk about today's top stories. First up, Bittrex filing for bankruptcy protection in Delaware yesterday, just 3 weeks after being sued by the SEC. According to a court filing, the crypto exchange estimates that it has more than 100,000 creditors, with estimated liabilities and assets both within the $500 million to $1 billion range. The development comes 2 months after the exchange announced that it would end all operations in the U.S. by the end of April in response to a regulatory crackdown. Now, later that month, the SEC sued Bittrex, claiming it operated a national securities exchange, broker, and clearing agency. Former Bittrex CEO Bill Shahara and Bittrex Global were also targeted in the suit. The company said the bankruptcy doesn't impact its operations outside the U.S. Next, crypto giant Digital Currency Group is in talks to reshuffle its debt with Genesis. According to a statement from the company released this morning, DCG is in talks with capital providers to find a way to refinance its outstanding obligations to Genesis, the subsidiary that went bankrupt earlier this year, $500 million of which is due this month. DCG also wants to raise new growth capital in the process after the company was hit hard by the collapse in crypto investor confidence and the pullback in prices last year. DCG is in the middle of a 30-day mediation with creditors to find a way to restructure Genesis. Last up, the governor of Ireland's central bank is joining calls around the world for a crypto crackdown. In a blog post, he called unbacked cryptocurrencies Ponzi schemes and said they were like buying a lottery ticket where you could win, but most likely wouldn't. He went on to say that MiCA, the regulation passed in the European Union to bring crypto under regulatory control, was an important step, but that the Central Bank of Ireland was still cautious and that there was still an urgent need for policy action. All right, let's keep talking about regulation for our main story. With Europe moving ahead with MiCA and major crypto companies like Coinbase looking to expand outside the U.S. to avoid a regulatory crackdown, could America get left behind by the industry? Crypto World's Jordan Smith spoke to Tim Tully, CEO of ZelCore, to get his take.
How would you categorize crypto regulation in the U.S. right now with the backdrop of things like MiCA in Europe and new interest in the U.K. and the UAE for headquarters for crypto companies? What's sort of the thinking about how the U.S. looks for crypto regulation?
Well, I think it's fairly obvious the U.S., unlike the others you've mentioned there, is leading with enforcement as opposed to a lot of these other countries that are leading with laying the regulation out there, coming up with the laws, and then they'll figure out enforcement later. The United States is leading with enforcement and debating regulation kind of behind the scenes.
With this current method of regulation by enforcement, you're seeing businesses, and when I say businesses, I really mean Coinbase to start, sort of stepping up and saying that we're preparing to take the SEC to court over this. Is that the right move for these businesses to sort of meet the SEC in court and try to fight this regulation by enforcement? Is that the right move in the long term, or do you think that that's going to cause more trouble?
I think they're frustrated, right? They're asked. They saw the congressional hearing where the head enforcer was asked the question, "Is Ethereum a security or not?" And the answer was no answer, right? So I think they're feeling flustered and trying to get to a situation. They want to continue to operate in the U.S. They know this country wants to be a leader in innovation, right? And so I think this is the way they're doing it. Time will tell whether it's the right strategy or not.
Yeah, you mentioned leadership there. I mean, do you think the U.S. gets left behind by the crypto industry? Do you see a reversal from that sort of 2021, early 2022 era where all these sorts of businesses were flocking to the U.S.? Do you think that's going to change?
Jordan, I think this is, for me, the biggest issue that we have. I mean, we struggle with the right words. Crypto is a name that's applied to this broad blockchain technology. And we're really focused on crypto finance, right? That's the first batter in a 9-inning game in the first inning, right? And the reality is crypto, the technology for all these other industries like medical and insurance and real estate and all that stuff, where blockchain is going to be the replacement for the internet. That's what we're going to win this little battle around crypto finance in the US, but we're going to lose the big war. And there are a lot of countries out there that are fighting for leadership, UAE, China, Russia, India, etc. I think we're really putting ourselves at risk. And even if we do come to our senses, does that get so far afield, the cat's so far out of the bag, that it's impossible for us to kind of rein that back in?
Yeah, you mentioned some other regions around the world that have some comprehensive legislation for crypto. I want to talk about that in just a second. But what's the sort of right move for regulation here in the US? Is it new lawmaking like we're seeing with MiCA or elsewhere? Or is it sort of the SEC saying we have the clarity right now, we just need to be very clear and direct about how we're going to move forward?
I think it's the former, right? First of all, it's clear that not everybody in the enforcement and in Congress understands the technology both now and in the future. They need to understand that, work with companies like ours and others in this space, in the ecosystem, to explain where it's headed. And then set the laws out there and then go about enforcing them. Look, what happened last year is what happens in industries when bad people are left with no rules, right? And they do what they do, right? And history has shown this time and time again, and it'll happen again in the future, right? What we have to be careful of is if we'd taken the actions against crypto like we would if we'd done that against the internet in the late 90s, early 2000s. Think about all these big companies like Apple, Google, Facebook, etc. They would all be offshore based. We'd have our center of influence and control over a lot of these things would be gone. And so those were left to grow and regulated kind of along the way. And I think that's the path we need to follow with crypto and blockchain technology in particular.
So is there a good role model for the U.S. around the globe for how we should move forward? Is it MiCA? Is it some of the comments we've gotten out of UK and the FCA there as to how they're going to regulate cryptocurrencies? What's the sort of model that the U.S. should look at?
I think MiCA is a good start. It's not perfect, but it's laying some railroad tracks. I think some of the things that are coming out of Hong Kong, there's some good things there. I think the honest answer, Jordan, is there's not a perfect role model right now, but we could probably pick and choose from a couple of different places and come up with a better solution.
When we talk to other people about regulation here in Crypto World, I think what comes up a lot is it's not going to be one agency that regulates crypto. I mean, you have the CFTC and the SEC battling out over or what sort of jurisdiction they have over the industry right now. But do you think that there also needs to be a new regulatory body or some sort of agency that focuses on digital assets? Do you think that the agencies we have now are capable of handling crypto regulation? What are you thinking there?
Well, that's a really good question. The quick answer for me is it's going to be a pervasive part of our economy, of our future, our employment models, et cetera, and frankly, our productivity gains in the future. I think people don't understand that what crypto and the whole Web3 model is replacing all the plumbing that's underneath a lot of the industries we have, right? And so there's a lot of implications there, and it gets back to your point. It's going to be, crypto is kind of the utility economy for the blockchain technology, right? So it's going to be pervasive, and it's going to be bigger than just those two entities, CFTC and the SEC. I don't have a good organization for you because I think it's going to be a fairly broad impact on all parts of our economy.
Okay, one more thing before we go. Yesterday, lawyers for Sam Bankman-Fried asked a judge to throw out most of the 13 criminal counts against him, saying the campaign finance charge against him wasn't included on the surrender warrant ahead of his extradition, and that other charges, including a bribery accusation, were improperly brought after he was extradited. But there are some charges that his lawyers aren't looking to throw out. CoinDesk reports that his attorneys did not try to dismiss charges alleging securities fraud and conspiracy to commit securities fraud, as well as money laundering. SBF's trial is set to begin in October, and of course, we'll keep you posted with all the developments. That's all for Crypto World today, but we will be back again tomorrow, so we'll see you then.